It is a noisy winter morning here in New York City. The radiators are ringing and airplanes are flying above and people are shouting in the alleyway and sirens and horns are going off on the streets. So I'm going to try to keep this recording as quiet as possible for you, but no promises.
Drive the highway down the moon. The billboard where you see me, ask the people for their king.
Welcome to the Silver Nitrate Witches movie review brew. I'm Laura Valenza, and in this mini episode, you'll, and that's spelled Y-U-L-E, be visited by the ghost of Christmas movies present. And now my cat is here. The ghost of Christmas movies past and the ghost of Christmas movies yet to come. Uh-oh. What was that? Was that the ghost of Christmas movies present making the floorboards creak? Let's talk about the Hallmark... Fern. Let's talk about the Hallmark Christmas movie, which could also be the Lifetime Christmas movie, Hallmark's classic nemesis in the seasonal movie biz, and at this point in time could also be any of the many other streaming services and production companies that have taken a stab at the formulaic Christmas movie genre. With movies like Happiest Season, streaming services like Hulu have even tried diversifying the heteronormative cast, adding a deeper and more artistic touch to the traditional formula, and bringing in star power like Kristen Stewart and directors like Clea Duvall. Hallmark launched its own streaming service, Hallmark Plus, last season in 2024 and has even introduced the limited series Holiday Style. According to Good Housekeeping, Hallmark has 24 new movies this very merry season, and according to TV Guide, Lifetime has 13. Even though few of us are watching cable these days, these movies still have that made-for-TV vibe and are extremely formulaic. They follow certain classic plot lines, like big city career woman gets trapped in idyllic small town and learns to love Christmas while falling in love with some generically perfect man. And at the end, she inexplicably gives up what seems like a great life in the city to be in the small town with the man she met 2 weeks before Christmas. It's a Christmas miracle. No villain is too villainous, no amount of garland is too much. Every scene is packed with ornaments, holly, mistletoe, decked out trees. Everything is blanketed in snow. And snow will start falling at the perfect romantic moments. There's a montage of Christmassy activities as the romantic hero and heroine, rarely a homosexual couple, fall in love while baking cookies and sledding and sipping hot cocoa by fire. Everyone is very chaste, yet falls totally in love very quickly. There's an almost kiss moment, but no actual kisses until the end. You watch a few of these movies and you get the gist of the easily repeatable narrative structure and the limited variations on story types. But if you want to dive really deep into it, I highly recommend the book It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Hallmark, the unofficial guide to writing a made-for-TV Christmas movie by Heather Hughes and Kate Wharton. In 2018, Film Criticism published 2 articles, one called A Hallmark of the Classical Hollywood Cinema, or Meeting Two Christmas Queens by Walter Metz, and the other a response to the first called The Gift That Keeps on Giving by Doyle Green. These writers equate the mass production of Christmas movies to the Hollywood studio system, and in turn to the emphasis on mass production in industry that happens in the first half of the 20th century. I bring that up because we're going to dive into Hallmark history and how Season's greetings became mass-produced like Model T Fords. If you thought 37 movies from Hallmark and Lifetime combined in this year alone was a lot, the two companies made a combined total of 74 movies in 2020. In her NPR article from that year, Holiday Rom-Coms Go Beyond Diversity to Center New Christmas Stars, Neda Ulabi points out that it's hard not to diversify via race, ability, and sexuality when you have to come up with that many stories. She has a great line about how the Hallmark Lifetime cliche has always been pretty white, featuring, quote, stars who, until recently, looked like a bunch of models from a Land's End catalog circa 1985, end quote. Cultural critic Brittany Luce points out that even with the 1996 movie The Preacher's Wife, starring Denzel Washington and Whitney Houston, the couple are denied the usually required happily ever after given to their white counterparts. A Lifetime representative consulted in 2020 says that it's as important to them to diversify the roles behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera. But what about the plot? While Ulabi seems optimistic about the formula making room for different POVs, I think it's still important to remember there's only so much diversity in a formula. And like screenwriter Tippi Dabrowski pointed out in an article called "This Jewish Couple Has Written 30 Christmas Movies and They're Not Alone," these movies kind of cater to a more conservative audience. I'll also point out that we're talking conservative in a commercial way, not necessarily overtly Christian, despite the religious holiday theme. In his 2021 article for Studies in Popular Culture called Hallmark Whiteness and the Paradox of Racial Tokenism, Sean Brayton argues that casting is not the only issue. We must also consider the plot. I'm going to read a passage from his article. Note his critique of the romantic idea of being a self-made man in American history and culture. The fascination with being self-made is going to keep coming up in today's episode. So here is the passage from Brayton. Essentially, white upward mobility, happiness, and ultimately love are facilitated not by white characters alone, as audiences are often led to believe, but rather primarily by racial tokens, a fact overshadowed by white romance in most Hallmark Christmas movies. In other words, the myth of the, quote, self-made, quote, white character is upheld only if viewers overlook the various types of work done by characters of color as both wage labor and multicultural matchmaker. So that's the end of Brayton's passage, and oh, hey, look who magically materialized before us. It's the ghost of Christmas movies past, here to tell us how a greeting card company became a powerhouse in film production. Our spectral friend wants us to know they're a responsible researcher who cites sources, and they learned about the history of Hallmark primarily via the company website and an article called The Fascinating Story of How Hallmark Came to Be More Than 100 Years Ago by Tasha Murtaugh, writing for Country Living in 2017. Kansas City, 1910. A young man named J.C. Hall opens a postcard company. J.C. had grown up in a poor family and was eager to work and build a business. When a fire destroyed his business's offices, he switched gears to selling Christmas and Valentine's cards in envelopes. In 1917, Hall's company expanded to gift wrap, but it was so popular they ran out of solid color stock. That pushed them to use the linings of decorative envelopes, and thus patterned wrapping paper was born. 1917 also brought the beginning of World War I. An increasing desire to stay in touch with those serving abroad increased business for Hall. By 1928, the company became known as Hallmark. To his credit, J.C. Hall was determined not to lay anyone off during the Depression and even occasionally hired. To keep building business, Hall used national advertising like radio and special rack displays for his cards, and he even made a licensing deal with Disney in 1931. So how did Hallmark get into movies? In 1951, Hallmark agreed to sponsor the first original opera for television, which aired on NBC on Christmas Eve, and was so popular, Hallmark continued sponsoring such content. And that continued to develop until we wind up where this episode started in the early 2000s. I'll also note that in the 1970s, Hallmark began making keepsake ornaments for Christmas, and this is also around the time that they launch card lines specifically targeting non-white and Jewish people. Whether on the card side of the business or the movie side, there's this lag to make their audience more inclusive. But I also think it's interesting how the company's audience growth mirrors major political developments in US culture more broadly. I'm sure there are many companies with similar trajectories, but there's something about Hallmark and their wholesomeness that makes it a particularly poetic metaphor for the changing American experience. Greeting cards allow us to feel connected, and Christmas movies are often about a holiday spirit of hope, gathering, and sharing love. Looking back from our current moment of post-pandemic, social media-induced malaise, and internet algorithms and AI reflecting our own biases and facilitating our disconnection, it's interesting to see this papery predecessor for farming out genuine social connection and genuine spirituality to corporations that strategize about who to sell that sense of connection to and who not to. Also, fun fact that I just had to put in here, Salvador Dali's art has graced Hallmark greeting cards. What a sellout. Even though the classic White Christmas did not come out until 1954, Hallmark was actually late to bring joy to the movie world. In I Want to Tell You About Christmas Town from a 2021 issue of Story Worlds, a journal of narrative studies, John D. Ayers offers a great overview of the history of the Christmas movie, largely thanks to the writing of John Mundy. The Christmas movie has been putting the tinsel in Tinseltown practically since the dawn of filmmaking, but the 1942 release of Holiday Inn ushered in a snowy flurry of fa la la fun. In the post-war period of the mid to late 40s, other major Christmas movie releases include It's a Wonderful Life, Miracle on 34th Street, and The Bishop's Wife. I'm also going to add 1944's Meet Me in St. Louis to that list. You might be catching a whiff of themes about capitalism, race, and the self-made man in America, along with the sweet scent of baking cookies. Let's actually let the ghost of Christmas movies past take us way, way back in time and to another country for a moment. While researching this episode, it was hard to avoid scholarship about the many iterations of A Christmas Carol, originally the novel by Charles Dickens, which was perhaps the Father Christmas of all the movies we've discussed so far. I want to move outside of the Hallmark sphere for a moment to cover 3 stories across 3 centuries that I think really revolutionized the Christmas movie and maybe storytelling in general. A Christmas Carol is not really a light story. A ghost story, horror singes its edges. It follows Scrooge, a terrible, miserly, rich old man. Scrooge's redemption comes when the wealthy are convinced to be more charitable to the poor. A tale of redemption fits the Christmas spirit, especially when considering the more spiritual and religious sides of the holiday. Fast forward about 100 years, and the Scrooge of It's a Wonderful Life, aka Mr. Potter, no longer qualifies for redemption. We have no hope for his character, and the way to fight him is by the masses coming together around our protagonist, George Bailey, played by Jimmy Stewart, and pooling their wealth and resources. In some ways, you could actually look at George Bailey's crisis of faith as coming from a fear that he is failing as a self-made man. He's no J.C. Hall of Hallmark fame. It's when he accepts his need for his community that he becomes eligible for redemption and for capitalist success. And again, supernatural elements and dark moments of deep spiritual and existential anxiety pervade the film. By the time we get to the next century, class no longer seems like a concern, and although we have the magical Mr. Bean character, the creepiness is expunged by 2003's Love Actually. However, grief, adultery, and a democratic use of multiple perspectives challenge traditional power structures. Despite a fixation on healing post 9/11 and during the era of global terrorism, it's not an American movie. And when our country makes a cameo appearance in Love Actually, America is embodied in the villainous and seductive form of Billy Bob Thornton. The tempered politics of the film leave no room for meditations on class or race. Although I do love this movie, and I'd say it generally aged pretty well over the last 2 decades, some of its cringier moments presage body positivity and the Me Too era. The movie still reflects the political concerns of its day, but its watered-down mass-market appeal does not make as bold statements as Christmas Carol or Wonderful Life. Around the same time as Love Actually's release, Hallmark was initiating the tsunami of formulaic, mass-produced Christmas movies that is continuing to crash down on us to this day. Love Actually also seems to have initiated a series of similar multi-viewpoint holiday movies like Valentine's Day from 2010 and New Year's Eve from 2011. However, the desire to mass-produce a formula whittles away at the democratic power of multiple viewpoints. Not to mention, none of these more artistically inclined movies have seriously grappled with race. Did the political dilution of the mainstream Christmas tale pave the way for the 2000s spree of hokey movies that are more about avoiding the reality of the world than finding a way to face it and still feel joy? Even so, older movies like Christmas Carol and Wonderful Life continue to haunt our holiday seasons. Looking at these 3 phases of Yuletide tale-telling, we're torn between charity, camaraderie, and the comatose. Wouldn't it be nice if Mr. Potter, like Mr. Scrooge before him, just did the decent thing and gave George Bailey back his missing money? When government continuously fails to represent the 99%, it's hard not to keep fantasizing about the ultra-rich just doing the right thing. And when the fantasy inevitably also disappoints, it's easy to hide in the safety of a generic formula. If you feel like I'm throwing some major shade on your Christmas parade, that's not me. That's actually the shadow cast by the Grim Reaper-esque figure of the ghost of Christmas movies yet to come. Apparently, those won't be movies anymore. They're miniseries and immersive experiences on Hallmark cruises. So I think we'll leave that Nightmare Before Christmas for another podcast and end this episode by opening a little gift. Our gift is a little movie magic. My spell for the holidays comes from It's a Wonderful Life, which is one of my favorite holiday movies. My family watches it every Christmas Eve. In the movie, George's little girl Zuzu says, "Every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings." And there is an angel trying to get his wings in this movie. Bells actually have a long history in spiritualism and witchcraft. They are supposed to be signs of protection, so I like the Wonderful Life affiliation between bells and a guardian angel. I recommend practicing a little bell magic on December 21st during the winter solstice, when you can harness the power of Mother Nature and when perhaps the veil between worlds will be a little thinner. Find a bell, or ring a spoon against a glass if you don't have a bell. Close your eyes, focus on your breath until you cannot hear the ring of the bell anymore. Open your eyes, take a deep inhale as you ring the bell again to close this quick little meditation, and exhale, breathing out every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings, while picturing a lost loved one or imagining the soothing light of a spiritual guardian. A lot of our magic is about asking for help for ourselves from the spiritual unknown, but I like that this spell can heal us while also helping whoever listens from the other side. Also, this is a pretty quick meditation, so it's useful for quickly calming yourself at any time while dealing with crazy family dynamics when you're home for the holidays. Thank you for listening to the Silver Nitrate Witches movie review brew. Once again, I'm Laura Valenza. Shout out to my podcast co-creator, Isabelle Lang. Thank you to the band Fine Motor for the use of their song Highway Moon. You can learn more about the band at finemotormusic.com. Stay witchy, keep watching movies, and have yourself a merry little Christmas.